Dog blocks ambulance from leaving. When they open the doors, his police owner is inside. The fluorescent lights of Atlanta Memorial Hospital cast harsh shadows across the empty corridor as Sarah Collins crouched beside Max, her fingers gently brushing the tactical vest on his muscular frame. The Belgian Malinois' ears perked forward, his dark eyes focused intently on the double doors ahead. At 2 a.m., the hospital's pharmacy wing should have been deserted, but the security footage suggesting otherwise had brought them here. "Easy, partner," Sarah whispered, checking her service weapon one last time. The weight of her badge felt particularly heavy tonight. 3 missing shipments of controlled substances in 2 months. Someone was getting sloppy, or maybe just greedy. Max's nose twitched, pulling in the clinical sense of antiseptic and medicine. But beneath those hospital smells, something else caught his attention. His muscles tensed beneath the black and tan fur, a low rumble building in his chest. Sarah recognized the change in her partner immediately. 6 years together had taught her to read Max's signals better than any training manual ever could. Something was wrong. The inventory discrepancies they'd been sent to investigate suddenly felt like the tip of a much larger iceberg. The storage room door was unlocked, the first red flag. Sarah's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing rows of metal shelves stacked with medical supplies. "Check perimeter," she commanded softly. Max moved forward with practiced precision, his nails clicking softly against the linoleum floor. A shadow shifted behind a shelf. Sarah's hand moved to her holster, but before she could draw, a voice cut through the darkness. "Officer Collins, we were hoping it would be you." The overhead lights blazed to life, momentarily blinding her. 3 men in paramedic uniforms emerged from behind the shelves, their stance anything but medical. Sarah recognized the one in front, James Morrison, the hospital's head pharmacist. "Mr. Morrison," she kept her voice steady, though her pulse had quickened. "Interesting time for inventory. You've been asking too many questions." Morrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just like Torres did." The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. Mike Torres had been her first partner in the K9 unit, killed in what was ruled a traffic accident 2 years ago. The case that had brought her and Max together. Max sensed the spike in Sarah's anxiety, his protective instincts kicking into high gear. A deep growl resonated through the room, causing one of Morrison's companions to take a step back. "Lock the dog in the supply closet," Morrison ordered. "Officer Collins and I need to have a private conversation about department safety protocols." Sarah's mind raced. 3 against 1, unknown weapons, limited escape routes. But Max was her wild card. These men didn't know what her partner was capable of. "Max, guard door," she commanded, making a show of directing him to the storage room entrance. The dog moved obediently, but his eyes never left the threats facing his handler. One of the men approached Max, holding out a dog treat like a peace offering. Sarah almost smiled. Amateur move. Max wasn't some pet to be bribed. He was a highly trained law enforcement officer with over 50 successful apprehensions to his name. The next few seconds exploded in chaos. The man reached for Max's collar, and Sarah used that moment to slam her elbow into Morrison's solar plexus. But the third man was faster than she'd anticipated. A sharp pain exploded in her neck. A needle. "Max, run!" Sarah managed to shout before her legs gave way. Through rapidly blurring vision, she saw her partner hesitate, torn between protecting her and following orders. "Go!" The last thing she heard before consciousness slipped away was Max's barking echoing down the corridor. Her final coherent thought was a prayer that he'd find help in time. The Belgian Malinois raced through the hospital halls, his powerful legs eating up the distance. Years of training screamed at him to stay, to fight, to protect. But deeper than training was his trust in Sarah. She had given him an order, and right now that order would save her life. Bursting through the emergency exit, Max's keen ears picked up the sound of a vehicle starting, the heavy rumble of a diesel engine. An ambulance pulled away from the service entrance, moving faster than any emergency vehicle had a right to at this hour. Inside the departing vehicle, Sarah lay unconscious on a gurney. Morrison checking her pulse with false professional concern. "Get us to the warehouse," he instructed the driver, "and someone better handle that damn dog before he alerts the whole precinct." But Max was already running, his powerful body a blur of purpose and determination. The camera mounted on his tactical vest transmitted live footage to the precinct, and his GPS tracker was active. Sarah had taught him well. Even separated, they were never truly alone. The ambulance's tires squealed as it took a corner too fast. Max followed, his claws finding purchase on the asphalt, never letting the vehicle escape his sight. In his mind, there was no question of giving up. Sarah wasn't just his handler, she was his family, his pack, his everything. 2 years ago, he had failed to save Officer Torres. That night still haunted his dreams, the scent of burning metal and gasoline mixed with something else, something he was smelling again tonight. This time would be different. This time, he would not fail. The streets of Atlanta blurred past as Max ran, his heart beating in sync with the rhythm of his paws hitting the pavement. Somewhere ahead, Sarah was in danger, and nothing, not distance, not exhaustion, not even death itself, would stop him from reaching her. Behind him, the first sirens began to wail. Max's muscles burned as he pursued the ambulance through Atlanta's darkened streets, but the Belgian Malinois wouldn't slow down. The familiar scent of his partner grew stronger. They were gaining ground. The ambulance's erratic driving suggested the men inside hadn't expected such determined pursuit from a K9 officer. 3 blocks ahead, traffic lights turned red. The ambulance blasted through them, causing a minivan to swerve sharply. Max saw his opportunity. While the vehicle navigated around startled drivers, he cut through an alley he and Sarah had used dozens of times during previous chases. His tactical vest camera bounced with each stride, broadcasting everything back to dispatch. The alley opened onto Peachtree Street, giving Max the advantage he needed. With a burst of speed that had earned him top marks in K9 training, he emerged directly in the ambulance's path. The vehicle's brakes squealed as the driver fought for control. Inside the ambulance, Sarah was fighting through the drug-induced haze. Years of field training had taught her to resist sedatives, but this was stronger than standard tranquilizers. Through blurred vision, she made out Morrison arguing with the driver. "Run him down!" Morrison shouted, but the driver hesitated. "That's a police dog, man. The charges will be nothing compared to what's waiting if we don't deliver her to the boss." The boss. Sarah forced her mind to focus on that word, even as her body refused to respond. There was someone higher up pulling the strings, someone who had orchestrated not just this kidnapping, but possibly Mike Torres's death as well. Max stood his ground as the ambulance crept forward, his training warring with instinct. Every muscle in his body wanted to attack, but Sarah had taught him patience. His barking grew more intense, drawing attention from nearby buildings. Lights were coming on, people were emerging onto balconies. Witnesses. Morrison cursed, recognizing the tactical advantage the dog had created. "Back up. We'll find another route." The ambulance's reverse lights flared to life, but Max was already moving. He circled to the back of the vehicle, using his body to block any retreat. More sirens wailed in the distance, patrol units responding to the GPS signal from his tactical vest. Sarah heard the familiar bark and felt a surge of pride through her drugged stupor. Max wasn't just creating a roadblock, he was buying time. Each second he delayed them was another second for backup to arrive, another second for the sedative to wear off. "Someone shut that dog up!" Morrison grabbed a medical bag, pulling out another syringe. "We're not losing everything because of some mutt." The back doors burst open, and Morrison aimed the syringe like a weapon. But Max had been waiting for this moment. 6 years of training alongside Sarah had taught him to read human body language, to anticipate threats before they fully developed. He launched himself through the doorway, his powerful jaws clamping down on Morrison's arm. The syringe clattered to the floor as man and dog tumbled backward into the ambulance. The other 2 men scrambled to help their boss, creating the chaos Max had intended. Sarah felt rough hands release her in the confusion. Her legs weren't working yet, but her arms had begun to respond. She rolled off the gurney, hitting the floor with a controlled fall, just as Mike had taught her years ago. The memory of her former partner gave her a surge of strength. Max maintained his hold on Morrison, but his attention never left Sarah. He saw her fall, saw her crawl toward the back doors. A swift kick from one of the other men caught him in the ribs, forcing him to release his bite. But that was okay. The distraction had served its purpose. Police! Freeze! The first patrol units had arrived, officers emerging from their vehicles with weapons drawn. The driver raised his hands immediately, but Morrison and his other accomplice weren't surrendering. They grabbed Sarah, trying to use her as a shield. What they hadn't counted on was Max's positioning. The moment they turned their attention to the officers outside, he struck again. This time, his target was the back of Morrison's knee. The man went down hard, dragging his companion with him. Sarah used the last of her strength to roll clear of the fight. Strong hands, friendly ones this time, pulled her to safety. Through the chaos of shouting voices and radio calls, she heard the distinctive sound of handcuffs clicking shut. "Sarah, stay with us!" Someone was checking her pulse. "We need medical here, real medical." "Max!" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Protect Max!" But her partner needed no protection. Max emerged from the ambulance under his own power, head held high. Blood matted the fur around his muzzle, Morrison's blood, but his steps were steady as he made his way to Sarah's side. He positioned himself between her and the growing crowd of emergency responders, his posture making it clear that no one would touch his partner without his approval. As paramedics worked to stabilize her, Sarah managed to raise one hand to Max's fur. The familiar texture helped ground her, fighting against the darkness that still pulled at the edges of her consciousness. Her fingers found a spot of wet blood on his tactical vest. "You're hurt," she mumbled. Max responded by gently licking her hand. The injury was minor. He'd had worse in training. What mattered was that Sarah was safe, that he hadn't failed her like he'd failed Mike Torres. But as the adrenaline of the chase faded, something nagged at Max's heightened senses. That smell from the hospital, the one that had haunted him since Mike's death. It wasn't coming from Morrison or his men. It lingered on Sarah's uniform, transferred there from someone else's hands. Someone who had been close to her recently. Someone who had helped set this trap. Max's ears swiveled, tracking the conversations around them. Officers coordinating with dispatch, detectives beginning their preliminary investigation. A familiar voice on a phone call. "Target is secure, but situation is complicated." "No, sir. Morrison's team failed. Collins is alive." Max's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. There it was, that scent, coming from within their own ranks. The night wasn't over. The real hunt was just beginning. The steady beeping of hospital monitors filled Sarah's private room at Grady Memorial. Max lay alert at the foot of her bed, his dark eyes tracking every movement in the hallway outside. They'd tried to remove him when she was first admitted, but his growls made it clear that wasn't happening. Now, 12 hours after the ambulance incident, even the most stringent hospital administrators had given up arguing about the K9 officer's presence. Sarah's fingers absently traced the IV line in her arm. The TOC screen had revealed a cocktail of drugs in her system, the same combination found in Mike Torres's system 2 years ago. The traffic accident that killed her former partner was looking less accidental by the minute. "You knew, didn't you?" she whispered to Max. The Belgian Malinois' ears twitched at her voice. "That's why you never liked the official story about Mike." Max shifted closer, resting his head on her lap. The memories washed over them both. The night that had forged their partnership through tragedy. 2 years earlier. "Sarah, you need to meet someone." Captain Rodriguez stood in the doorway of the K9 training facility, his expression unusually gentle. She'd been holed up there for days after Mike's funeral, reviewing training protocols, as if they could somehow change the past. A Belgian Malinois trotted in beside the captain, his bearing military precise despite obvious recent injuries. A healing scar ran along his flank, and one ear was still bandaged. "This is Max. He was working with the DEA task force until last week. Handler was killed in action." Rodriguez's voice carried weighted meaning. He's been refusing to work with anyone else. Reminds me of someone. Sarah met the dog's intense gaze. There was something in those eyes, a deep understanding of loss, a burning need to make things right. She recognized it from her own mirror. Mike's case file said he was alone that night, Sarah said quietly, not breaking eye contact with Max. But that wasn't true. Was it, Captain? Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. Max was there. DEA had borrowed him for a surveillance operation. When they found him, he was trying to drag Mike from the wreckage, burns all down his left side, but he wouldn't leave his post. Sarah knelt, letting Max approach on his own terms. The dog moved forward cautiously, his nose working overtime. She could almost see him processing her connection to Mike, their years as partners, the countless hours of shared patrols. The official report said Mike fell asleep at the wheel. Sarah's voice hardened, but Mike never drove tired. He'd pull over, call for backup. He was too good a cop. Max's sudden growl cut her off. The sound wasn't directed at her, but at the mention of the official story. His posture had changed, muscles tensing as if ready for action. Maybe, Rodriguez chose his words carefully, maybe some stories need to stay official, for everyone's safety. But Sarah barely heard him. She was focused on Max, on the way his eyes seemed to be trying to tell her something. When she held out her hand, he pressed his muzzle into her palm without hesitation. In that moment, a bond formed that went beyond Handler and K9. They were two warriors who had lost their partners, their faith in the system shaken, but their determination to serve justice unbroken. Present day. A soft knock interrupted Sarah's memories. Detective Lisa Chen from Internal Affairs stood in the doorway, her expression grave. Max's posture subtly shifted, alert, but not aggressive. He'd worked with Chen before, trusted her as much as any human besides Sarah. "How you feeling?" Chen asked, closing the door behind her. "Like I was drugged and stuffed in an ambulance." Sarah managed a weak smile, but ready to talk. Chen pulled out her notebook. "Morrison's singing like a bird in custody, claims he was just following orders, but won't name names. Says there's someone inside the department who—" "I know." Sarah's hand found Max's fur, drawing strength from his solid presence. "The same someone who set up Mike Torres 2 years ago. The drugs in my system match his tox screen exactly." "How did you—" "I had them run the comparison as soon as I was conscious." Max recognized the scent, Chen. The same scent from Mike's accident scene was on one of the people at the hospital last night. Max's ears pricked forward at the mention of the scent. His nose twitched, remembering. Chemical tang underneath expensive cologne. Authority and gunpowder. A smell that walked their halls every day. "Sarah?" Chen leaned forward, lowering her voice. Before Mike's accident, he was investigating missing pharmacy supplies, not just from Atlanta Memorial, but from evidence lockup. Narcotics seized in raids coming up short during transport to disposal facilities. "Inside job," Sarah breathed. "High enough rank to access the evidence, alter transportation logs. High enough to bury investigations," Chen finished, "and label suspicious deaths as accidents." Max stood suddenly, a low growl building in his chest. Sarah followed his gaze to the hallway where Captain Rodriguez was approaching the room, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Sarah, thank God you're all right," he called through the door's window. "I brought your favorite, hazelnut with extra cream." But Sarah wasn't looking at the coffee. She was watching Max, seeing his reaction to their captain of 6 years. The dog's hackles were raised, his teeth barely visible beneath pulled-back lips. The same reaction he'd had at Mike's accident scene, the same cologne. "Chen," Sarah kept her voice steady as Rodriguez reached for the door handle. "I think we need to talk somewhere more private. Now." Max moved to stand between Sarah and the door, his powerful frame radiating protective energy. Through the window, Rodriguez's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes as he noted the dog's posture. "Actually," Chen's hand moved casually toward her weapon. "I think the captain should join us. We have a lot to discuss about pharmaceutical transportation protocols." In the fluorescent hospital lights, the coffee in Rodriguez's hands suddenly looked very much like the color of Mike's last meal, the one found in his stomach during the autopsy. Sarah's fingers found the nurse call button as Max's growl deepened. Sometimes the past didn't just haunt you. Sometimes it came back armed with coffee and a badge, thinking you were too drugged to connect the dots. Sometimes justice needed teeth. Rodriguez's coffee splashed against the hospital room door as he dropped both cups, drawing his weapon in one fluid motion, but Max was faster. The Belgian Malinois launched himself at the glass, his powerful bark sending nearby nurses scrambling for cover. The noise bought Chen enough time to draw her own gun. "Step back, Captain," Chen ordered, positioning herself between Rodriguez and Sarah's bed. "Keep those hands where I can see them." Rodriguez's practiced smile never wavered. "There's been a misunderstanding. I'm sure once Sarah's system is clear of those drugs, she'll realize that you killed Mike Torres." Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "That you've been running a drug operation through the evidence lockup for years." "Careful, Collins." Rodriguez's eyes hardened. "Accusations like that could end more careers than just yours." As if on cue, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. 4 officers from Rodriguez's personal tactical team appeared, weapons drawn. Through the window, Sarah could see patients and staff being quietly evacuated from the floor. "Detective Chen," Rodriguez's voice carried the authority of 2 decades on the force. "Lower your weapon." Officer Collins is clearly confused, possibly suffering paranoid delusions from her recent trauma. She needs to be sedated and transferred to a secure facility for evaluation. Max's growl deepened, his body coiled like a spring between the door and Sarah's bed. He recognized the implications in Rodriguez's words. The same accident that had claimed Mike Torres was being prepared for his current partner. Sarah's mind raced. The room's single window overlooked a 4-story drop. The ventilation duct was too small for a human escape. Their only exit was through the door, past Rodriguez and his team. Her legs were still shaky from the drugs, and Chen was good, but against 5 armed officers? "Last chance," Rodriguez warned. "Stand down, or this gets ugly." Chen's finger tightened on her trigger. "Already ugly, sir. The moment you decided to kill a fellow officer." "Mike Torres was a casualty of his own curiosity," Rodriguez spat, "just like you two are about to be." The first shot shattered the door's window. Max launched into action, his training taking over. As glass rained down, he hit the door with his full weight, sending it crashing into the tactical team's front line. The narrow hospital corridor worked in his favor, turning their numerical advantage into chaos. "Go," Chen shouted, laying down covering fire. "I've got the door." Sarah ripped out her IV and swung her legs off the bed. Her police instincts warred with the lingering effects of the drugs, but adrenaline was a powerful antidote. Max was already back at her side, pressing against her leg to steady her. "Elevator's not an option," Sarah gasped, letting Max guide her toward the service stairwell. "They'll have it locked down." Behind them, gunfire erupted in earnest. Chen was buying them time, but it wouldn't last long. Through her dizziness, Sarah noted the fire escape route markers. 6 flights down to the ground floor, then across the parking garage to... A bullet splintered the wall beside her head. Rodriguez had flanked around the other corridor, cutting off their route to the main stairwell. His expression was no longer friendly. "You know what bothered me most about Mike?" he called out, advancing steadily. "He actually thought one honest cop could make a difference, that all his evidence and recordings would change anything in this city." Max pushed Sarah behind a supply cart, his muscles tensed for combat. But Sarah grabbed his tactical vest, holding him back. Rodriguez was too good a shot to risk a frontal assault. "You're right," Sarah projected her voice, letting Rodriguez track it. "One cop can't change everything. That's why Mike made copies." Rodriguez's steps faltered. "You're bluffing. We searched his place, his car, everything." Sarah laughed, the sound echoing off sterile hospital walls. "You really think Mike kept evidence against a corrupt captain in his own name? Everything went to a secure server, time-locked. If I don't check in every 24 hours, it all goes to the FBI. A lie, but one based on knowing her former partner. Mike had been meticulous, paranoid even. The question was, had Rodriguez known him well enough to spot the bluff? The captain's next words were drowned out by a thunderous explosion from the floor above. The sprinkler system activated, alarms blaring throughout the building. Through the chaos, Sarah heard Chen's voice on her radio. "Backup's here! Full tactical response, all exits covered!" Rodriguez swore, the sound almost lost under the water and sirens. Sarah risked a glance around the cart in time to see him retreating toward the service elevator, his private escape route. "Max, track!" The command was unnecessary. Her partner was already moving, his powerful legs eating up the distance. Sarah forced her own body to follow, using the wall for support. She wouldn't let Rodriguez escape, not after Mike, not after everything. The service elevator doors were closing as they rounded the corner. Max hurled himself forward, catching the gap with his jaws. Metal groaned as he forced the doors back open through sheer determination. Rodriguez stood in the elevator car, his gun aimed at Max's head. "Call him off, Collins. Last warning." Sarah raised her own weapon, stolen from a downed tactical officer. "You knew about Max's injuries from the night Mike died. The real story, not the official report. Only 3 people had that knowledge. Me, Mike, and whoever was there to ensure he didn't survive the crash." Water from the sprinklers ran down Rodriguez's face, but his aim remained steady. "He was a good dog, did everything we trained him to do. Shame he had to watch his handler die." Max's growl turned feral. In that moment, Sarah saw it all connect. Rodriguez hadn't just killed Mike. He'd been there after, watching Max try to save his handler, making sure no help arrived in time. "Max!" Sarah's voice was ice. "Take him!" The Belgian Malinois became a blur of tactical training and controlled fury. Rodriguez's shot went wide as Max's jaws found his gun arm. Man and dog slammed into the elevator wall, years of buried rage finally unleashed. Sarah limped forward, her weapon trained on the fight. "Mike recorded everything that night, didn't he? That's why you had to destroy his car so thoroughly. Had to make sure the dash cam, his phone, everything burned." Rodriguez struggled to break Max's hold, but the dog had been waiting 2 years for this moment. Every training exercise, every drug bust, every chase had been preparation for bringing down his partner's killer. He was supposed to be alone, Rodriguez gasped. DEA borrowed the dog. Last minute. Ruined everything. Sarah reached for her cuffs. "Maybe that's the difference between dirty cops and real ones, Captain. We're never alone." Max maintained his grip until the cuffs were secure, then took up a guard position. His eyes never left Rodriguez, even as SWAT teams flooded the corridor. In the distance, more sirens approached, the cavalry arriving too late, just like that night 2 years ago. But this time, justice wouldn't be buried under paperwork and lies. This time, Max had made sure his partner survived to tell the truth. Sarah sank to her knees beside her dog, finally letting exhaustion take over. Max pressed against her, offering silent support. Together, they watched Rodriguez being led away, knowing their fight wasn't over. There would be more corrupt officers to find, more networks to dismantle. But for now, they had kept their promise to Mike, and sometimes that was enough. The hospital sweep found 3 more bodies. Detective Chen spread crime scene photos across Sarah's kitchen table. All accidental deaths from the past 5 years, all connected to cases where evidence went missing from lockup. 2 days after Rodriguez's arrest, Sarah's apartment had become the unofficial headquarters for their investigation. Max patrolled the perimeter every hour, his training preventing complacency even with a protective detail outside. Sarah traced a pattern on one of the autopsy reports. Same drug cocktail they used on me. Morrison's signature recipe. Her hand unconsciously touched the fading injection mark on her neck. Max's sudden bark cut through their discussion. Not his alert bark, but the specific tone Sarah had learned meant he'd found something. The Belgian Malinois stood by her laptop, pawing at the keyboard. "What is it, partner?" Sarah moved to his side, noting how his nose pressed against a particular file icon. It was labeled simply K9TR Backup, hidden in Mike's old K9 training records. The file contained hundreds of documents, each meticulously catalogued, but it was the video file marked Final that made Sarah's blood run cold. "This is from the night he died," she whispered, pressing play. The dashcam footage was dark, showing an empty stretch of highway. Mike's voice came through clearly. "Following suspect vehicle, requesting backup." Static interrupted the transmission. "This isn't the corrupted dashcam footage." Sarah zoomed in on a reflection in the guardrail. "This is from Max's tactical camera." The image quality was poor, but they could make out another vehicle approaching Mike's patrol car. A figure stepped out. Rodriguez, 6 years younger but unmistakable. The audio crackled. "You should have stayed out of it, Torres." Max growled at the sound of Rodriguez's voice. Sarah stroked his fur, feeling the tension in his muscles. He had carried this memory for 2 years, unable to tell anyone what he had witnessed. The apartment's power went out, plunging them into darkness. Max's growl deepened as footsteps echoed on the fire escape. Glass shattered in the bedroom. Max was moving before Sarah could give the command, his powerful frame disappearing into the darkness. A man's cry of pain confirmed his target acquisition. "Police, drop your weapons," Chen shouted, but answering gunfire forced her back behind the kitchen counter. "Sarah Collins," a familiar voice called through the broken window. "Still protecting a dead man's secrets?" Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, Rodriguez's second in command. The pieces clicked into place. He was cleaning up his boss's mess, ensuring the corruption died with Rodriguez. "It's over, Hayes." Sarah projected confidence she didn't feel. "The file's already been uploaded." "No." Hayes's laugh was cold, just like it didn't die with Torres. "Face it, Collins. The system works how it works. Good cops learn to look the other way, or they have accidents. Even hero dogs can't change that." Max's snarl from the bedroom spoke volumes about his opinion on that philosophy. Sarah heard Hayes's sharp intake of breath. He hadn't expected the K9 officer to move so silently into position behind him. "That's the difference between us," Sarah said. "You think the system is about power, but it's about justice. And sometimes justice has teeth." "Take them," Hayes ordered. The apartment erupted in chaos. Max struck first, taking Hayes down with practiced efficiency. Sarah and Chen moved in synchronized defense, using their knowledge of the apartment's layout against the tactical team's superior numbers. A flashbang grenade rolled into the kitchen. Sarah had a split second to make a decision. "Max, evidence!" she shouted, throwing her laptop toward the fire escape. Her partner released Hayes, snatching the computer in mid-air. Without hesitation, he leaped through the broken window, computer secured in his powerful jaws. "No!" Hayes struggled to his feet, firing wildly after the dog, but Max was already moving across rooftops, carrying Mike's final testimony to safety. The apartment door exploded inward. FBI tactical teams poured through every entrance, led by Agent Sandra Torres, Mike's sister. She took in the scene with cold professionalism. "Lieutenant Hayes," Sandra's badge caught the light from the agent's tactical lamps. "I believe you were about to confess to conspiracy in my brother's murder." Hayes's tactical team hesitated, realizing they were now outnumbered by federal agents. One by one, they lowered their weapons. "Mike knew he might not survive getting the evidence out," Sandra said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "So he made sure his partner would carry on the fight, both of his partners." Through the broken window, a familiar bark echoed across the night. Max had completed his mission, just as he'd been trained, just as Mike had trusted him to do. Sarah touched the badge on her vest, the same badge Mike had worn. "Good boy, Max," she whispered. "Good boy." The night wasn't over. There would be statements to take, evidence to process, corruption to root out at every level. But Mike's killer was in custody, his conspiracy exposed, and his final case was closing at last. Sometimes justice needed patience, sometimes it needed sacrifice, and sometimes it needed a partner with unwavering loyalty and unshakable courage, carrying the truth forward, one bite at a time. 1 month after the raid on Sarah's apartment, the Atlanta Police Department's K9 training facility hummed with unusual activity. Max sat at perfect attention beside Sarah, his tactical vest gleaming with a new commendation medal. Before them, rows of chairs filled with officers, federal agents, and family members waited for the ceremony to begin. FBI agent Sandra Torres approached the podium, her badge catching the morning light. 2 years ago, my brother Officer Mike Torres made the ultimate sacrifice, trying to expose corruption within our ranks. Today, thanks to his meticulous planning and the unwavering dedication of his former partners, that sacrifice has finally brought justice. Sarah felt Max shift slightly against her leg. He always reacted to Mike's name, but today his posture showed pride rather than grief. The evidence he'd saved that night had blown the case wide open. 17 officers arrested, 3 judges indicted, and a drug distribution network worth millions dismantled. Lieutenant Hayes has agreed to a full confession, Sandra continued. In exchange for considerations, he's provided details about every criminal operation running through the evidence lockup, every dirty cop, every tampered case, every accidental death. Sarah's hand found Max's fur, drawing strength from his solid presence. Hayes's confession had confirmed what they'd long suspected. Mike had been targeted the moment he started documenting discrepancies in the evidence logs. Rodriguez had ordered the hit, but it was Hayes who'd followed Mike's car that night, who'd watched to ensure the accident went as planned. What neither of them had counted on was Max's tactical camera recording everything. Even after Mike's death, even through 2 years of working alongside Rodriguez, Max had never forgotten the scent of his partner's killers. But today isn't just about closing old cases, Sandra's voice softened. It's about honoring those who carry on the fight. Officer Sarah Collins, would you and Max please step forward? They moved as one unit, their steps perfectly synchronized. In the front row, Detective Chen smiled. She'd been cleared of any involvement and promoted to lead a new internal affairs task force. Officer Collins, your dedication to uncovering the truth, even at great personal risk, exemplifies the highest standards of law enforcement. Sandra lifted a plaque from the podium. The FBI is formally recognizing your role in breaking this case. But more importantly, we're implementing the Torres Protocol, a new system of evidence tracking and oversight that Mike first proposed. Sarah accepted the plaque, but her focus was on the framed photo beside it. Mike's official portrait, smiling in his dress uniform. He always said one honest cop could make a difference. And one extraordinary dog, Sandra added, kneeling to Max's level. She held up a custom-made collar tag, inscribed with words that made Sarah's throat tight. In honor of Officer Michael Torres, justice has 4 legs. Max held perfectly still as Sandra attached the tag, but his eyes never left Sarah. They both knew that while medals and ceremonies were nice, their real reward was in the work itself, in making Atlanta's streets safer, one case at a time. There's one more announcement, Sandra straightened up. The department is expanding its K9 program with a focus on evidence detection and officer protection. Officer Collins will be heading the new training division. And Max, she smiled. Well, Max has already proven himself to be an excellent teacher. The applause was interrupted by an urgent radio call, a suspicious package at the airport, potential narcotics involved. Sarah felt Max tense beside her, ready for action. Duty calls, she told Sandra, already moving toward the exit. Max fell into step beside her, his new tag catching the light. Sarah, Sandra called after them, Mike would be proud of both of you. In the patrol car, Sarah checked Max's vest one last time, a habit born of years of partnership. His tactical camera was active, recording everything just as it had that night 2 years ago. But now, those recordings would be encrypted and uploaded automatically, protected by the very protocols Mike had died trying to implement. Ready, partner? She asked. Max's bark was confident, decisive. The past was settled, justice had been served, but their work wasn't done. There would always be more cases, more challenges, more chances to prove that the thin blue line held strong because of partners like them. Sarah started the engine, smiling as Max took his usual position, alert and ready. Together, they pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward their next case. Behind them, Mike's photo watched over the training facility, his legacy living on in every paw print, every solved case, every bit of justice served. Sometimes the best way to honor the fallen was to carry on their fight, and with partners like Max, that fight would never be fought alone.